So there I was, Gene, just your average Joe, gearing up for what should have been the highlight reel of my life, my wedding. Picture the small, sleepy town where the biggest event is the annual bake sale, and now, my wedding's the talk of the town. Everything was set, from the flowers to the guest list. Then, boom, 1 month out, and my world got flipped on its head. I'm not much of a tech whiz, but I had recently rigged up some security cameras around my place, just to keep an eye on things. Never, in my wildest dreams, did I think they'd catch something like this. One evening, I'm sitting there, scrolling through the footage, and what do I see? Claire, my Claire, with some other guy. I mean, it was like a punch to the gut, seeing them there, in our home. Man, my mind was racing. Anger, shock, disbelief, you name it, I felt it. But then, this weird calm settled over me. I thought, okay, Gene, you've got two choices here. Confront her and watch your fairy tale wedding go up in flames, or play the long game. So, I chose the latter. I decided to keep it all under wraps, act like Mr. Oblivious. Trust me, it wasn't easy smiling at Claire, discussing wedding plans when all I could see was that betrayal. Every day was like walking on a tightrope. I had to keep my cool, go through the motions of the excited groom-to-be. Cake tasting, sure, finalizing the guest list, absolutely. All the while, this secret was burning a hole in my pocket. You see, I had a plan. It wasn't just about calling off the wedding, it was about exposing the truth, letting everyone see Claire for who she really was. But to pull this off, I needed my inner circle. My best mates, the guys who were supposed to stand with me at the altar, they had to know. So, I spilled everything, showed them the footage. You should have seen their faces, it was a mix of horror and, we've got your back, man. As the days ticked by, I put on the performance of a lifetime, pretending everything was hunky-dory. Claire, none the wiser, was wrapped up in the wedding fever. Little did she know, her perfect day was about to turn into a nightmare. It was a waiting game, a countdown to the moment when I dropped the bomb and watch her world crumble like mine did. And let me tell you, those days leading up to the wedding, they were the longest of my life. Every hug from Claire, every kiss, felt like a betrayal. But I had to see this through. For my sake, for the sake of truth. So, there I was, a month out from D-Day, juggling the weight of this secret and the facade of the happy fiancé. But inside, I was a storm, waiting to unleash. Man, that month was something else. By day, I was the picture-perfect fiancé, all smiles and nods, discussing flower arrangements and reception menus with Claire. I played my part well, even surprised myself a bit. I'd look into her eyes, those same eyes that once spelled love, now a reminder of deception, and I'd pretend that the world was all roses and champagne. But when night fell, it was a whole different ballgame. I'd retreat into my own world, my mind a battlefield of strategies and plans. It was like leading a double life. The gears in my head were constantly turning, plotting the big reveal. It wasn't just about confronting Claire. It was about exposing her in front of everyone who mattered, our families, our friends, the whole darn town if it came down to it. Now, I wasn't going to go down this road alone. I needed my squad, my groomsmen, the guys who had been with me through thick and thin. So, I called them up, one by one, and let them in on the secret. Showed them the footage. Man, you should have seen their reactions, it was a mix of anger, shock, and this fierce loyalty. They were on board from the get-go, ready to back me up. We spent nights huddled in my living room, whispering like conspirators, mapping out every detail. We planned it down to the second, the timing, the words, the aftermath. I had to think of everything. What if Claire denied it? What if she made a scene? The scenarios played out in my head over and over. My buddies were my sounding board, throwing in ideas, thinking 2 steps ahead. They were my rock in this whole crazy scheme. Days turned into weeks, and the facade of the doting fiancé was wearing me thin. Smiling at Claire, holding her hand, it was like a performance on repeat. But every smile, every touch, was laced with the truth I was holding back. The irony was bitter, planning a wedding while planning its downfall. And the closer we got to the wedding, the more surreal it all felt. I was living in this bizarre limbo, counting down the days not to a marriage but to a reckoning. It was like watching a play where you know the final act is going to shock the audience, but you just keep rehearsing your lines, waiting for the curtain call. Through it all, I kept up appearances. I had to. There was no room for slip-ups, no chance to let my guard down. Claire was oblivious, caught up in the bridal buzz, while I was orchestrating the endgame. It was a twisted game of chess, and I was maneuvering for that final checkmate. So, yeah, that month was a whirlwind, a mix of wedding plans and revenge plots. The double life was exhausting, but there was a strange thrill to it. I was the puppeteer in this grand scheme, pulling the strings, waiting for the moment to cut them loose. And as the big day drew near, I knew one thing for sure. This wedding was going to be unforgettable. So, the big day finally rolls around. Let me paint you a picture. The sun's shining, there's this gentle breeze blowing, and the chapel's filled to the brim with family, friends, and folks from around town. Everyone's buzzing with excitement, the air's practically sparkling with that wedding day magic. Claire, man, she looked stunning, like she stepped right out of a bridal magazine. Everything, and I mean everything, was picture perfect. But, deep down, I knew this was no fairy tale ending. The ceremony kicks off, and we're going through the motions. I'm standing there at the altar, trying my best to keep my game face on. We're doing the vows, the rings, all that jazz. Then, the moment of truth. The priest asks the golden question, if anyone objects to this marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. That's my cue. I step forward, mic in hand, and there's this hush over the crowd. I start off with the usual, thanking everyone for coming, talking about love and togetherness. You know, the kind of stuff you'd expect in a wedding speech. But then, my tone shifts. I turn to Claire, and I can see it in her eyes, she knows something's up. And then, I just let it rip. There's something you all should know, I say. The room's dead silent, you could hear a pin drop. I give my best man the nod, and he hits play on the projector. Dear readers, I hope you're as hooked on this journey as I was living it. Before we dive into the next chapter of this roller coaster story, I've got a small favor to ask. If you're enjoying this tale of love, adventure, and unexpected twists, how about showing some love? Hit that like button to let me know you're on board. It's a simple click for you, but it means the world to me. It's like a virtual high five, telling me to keep the stories coming. And hey, why stop there? Go ahead and hit subscribe, too. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming up next. Subscribing will keep you in the loop, so you're always the first to know when a new chapter drops. Plus, it's a great way to support this storyteller on his quest to keep you entertained. So, take a quick second to like and subscribe. Done? Awesome. Now, buckle up and let's jump back into the story. The next chapter's waiting, and trust me, you don't want to miss a beat of what's coming up next. So, there we were, in the middle of what should have been the happiest day of my life, and boom, the giant screen lights up behind us. It was like a scene straight out of a movie, except this was real life, my life, playing out for all to see. The footage rolls, and there's Claire, right there on the big screen, but not in her wedding dress. No, she's opening our front door to some guy, and it's definitely not me. The whole room goes dead silent. You could literally feel the shockwave rip through the crowd. People's faces, they were a picture. A mix of disbelief, confusion, and yeah, some gossip-hungry excitement too. And Claire, she's standing there, frozen. I mean, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her face was pale, her hands were shaking, the whole deal. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the screen, and neither could anyone else. The video kept playing, each second a nail in the coffin of what was supposed to be our marriage. You could see Claire and this guy, laughing, cozying up. It was all there, clear as day. I watched the crowd watching the screen, so the realization dawned on their faces. This wasn't just some pre-wedding jitters or cold feet, this was real, raw betrayal. Then the murmurs started, quiet at first, then growing louder. It was like the room was coming to life, reacting to the bombshell I just dropped. People were whispering, pointing, some even looking at me with this mix of sympathy and respect. I guess they figured it took guts to do what I did. Claire finally managed to look away from the screen, her eyes darting around the room, probably looking for some kind of escape. But there was none, the truth was out, and there was no taking it back. She looked at me, and for a moment, our eyes locked. I saw a lot of things in those eyes: shock, shame, maybe even a little bit of fear. But there wasn't any love, not anymore. The video ended, and the screen went dark, but the damage was done. The silence was replaced by a cacophony of voices, everyone trying to make sense of what they'd just seen. Claire was standing there, looking like she wanted the ground to swallow her up. I don't think she'd ever imagined her wedding day would turn into her public unmasking. I didn't stick around for the aftermath. I walked out of that chapel with my head held high, my groomsmen at my side. Behind me, I could hear the chaos starting, the whispers turning into a storm. But I didn't look back. That chapter of my life was over. Outside, the sun was still shining, but everything felt different. It was like waking up from a long, twisted dream. I felt this weight lift off me, a mix of relief and emptiness. But there was also this sense of closure. I'd exposed the truth, shattered the illusion of the perfect wedding, the perfect life. So, there I was, walking out of the church, my buddies and family trailing behind me. The air was thick with all sorts of emotions: shock, relief, even a bit of pride. Stepping out into the sunlight, it felt like I was leaving a whole different world behind. Inside, Claire was facing the music, her perfect wedding turned into her worst nightmare. I didn't look back, not even once. I could feel the weight of the stairs, hear the muffled conversation spilling out the church doors, but I kept walking. My mind was a whirlwind, but there was also this weird sense of calm. I'd done it, exposed the truth, put an end to the lies. It was like shedding a skin, leaving the old, betrayed me behind in that church. Behind me, I heard Claire. She was pleading, her voice breaking through the chatter and confusion. She was calling out to me, trying to say sorry, trying to explain. But it was too late for that. Too late for apologies, for explanations. The Claire I'd loved, the one I'd planned to spend my life with, she was just a memory now, a ghost in my past. I kept walking, the sounds of the wedding turned spectacle fading with each step. My friends were patting me on the back, mumbling words of support. My family, they were a mix of emotions, sad for me, but also proud that I'd stood up for myself. It was a strange moment, saying goodbye to a chapter of my life in such a dramatic fashion. The further I walked, the lighter I felt. It wasn't happiness, not really. It was more like freedom, like I'd been carrying this huge burden and now it was gone. I'd been living in this bubble of deceit, and now it had burst, leaving me out in the open, raw but real. I didn't have a plan, no idea where I was going from here. All I knew was that I needed to get away, to put some distance between me and the ruins of my almost wedding. The future was a big, blank canvas, but that was okay. It was better than a future built on lies. As we walked away from the church, the sounds of Claire's pleas finally disappeared. It was done. She was part of my past now, a chapter closed. Ahead of me, the road was open, leading to new beginnings, new possibilities. It was a tough way to learn a lesson, but it was one I'd never forget. Trust, once broken, couldn't be mended, not really. I'd walked into that church as one man, and walked out as another. A man freed from a web of lies, ready to start over, to rebuild on a foundation of truth. So, there I was, walking away from what should have been my wedding, but instead was my liberation. It was a bitter end to a sweet dream, but sometimes, that's just how life goes. You play the cards you're dealt, and sometimes, you have to call a bluff. That day, I called the biggest bluff of all, and in doing so, found a new kind of strength. And as for Claire, well, she'd have to live with her choices, just like I'd have to live with mine. But at that moment, walking away, I wasn't thinking about her. I was thinking about me, about what came next. It was a blank page, and I was ready to start writing a new story. A month of pain and deceit had turned into a moment of liberation for me. Walking away from that church, from Claire, felt like shedding a heavy coat I'd been wearing for too long. It was over, the lies, the betrayal, all of it. I was free, and man, did that feel good. As for Claire, she was left to deal with the fallout. I heard she tried to reach out, sent messages, left voicemails. She was saying it was a moment of weakness, a mistake, and that she'd do anything to fix it. But for me, it was too little, too late. There was no going back from something like that. She'd crossed a line, and there was no erasing it. I'd spent a month living a lie, smiling through the pain, pretending everything was fine. But now, I didn't have to pretend anymore. I could be honest, with myself and with everyone else. It was like I could breathe again, really breathe, without that weight pressing down on my chest. Claire's pleas for forgiveness, her promises to change, they didn't mean much to me anymore. It wasn't just about her cheating. It was about the trust that had been broken, shattered into a million pieces. You can't just pick those pieces up and put them back together. Some things, once broken, stay broken. I started looking forward, thinking about what was next for me. The future was a blank slate, and that was exciting. I could do anything, be anyone. I wasn't tied down by Claire's expectations or our shared plans. It was just me, on my own, and that was okay. I spent time with friends, reconnected with people I'd lost touch with. I picked up old hobbies, tried new things. It was like rediscovering parts of myself that I'd forgotten about, parts that had been buried under the relationship. And yeah, there were moments when I'd think about Claire, about what could have been. But those moments were fleeting, like shadows passing by. I was too focused on moving forward, on building a new life for myself. People would ask me about her, about what happened. I'd just shrug and say it was a part of my past. I didn't want to dwell on it, didn't want to give it more power than it deserved. It was a chapter in my life, sure, but it was a chapter that had ended. As for Claire, I heard she was struggling, trying to make sense of everything. But that wasn't my problem anymore. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with them. I had my own path to follow, my own choices to make. In the end, it was about more than just getting over a broken relationship. It was about finding myself again, about learning what I really wanted out of life. It was a journey, and I was just getting started. So, there I was, a month out from the biggest betrayal of my life, feeling more alive than I'd felt in years. It was a strange feeling, like I'd been asleep and was finally waking up. I was ready for whatever came next, ready to face the world on my own terms. And that's exactly what I did. I moved forward, one step at a time, into a future that was mine and mine alone. It was a future without Claire, without the lies and the pain. It was just me, and that was enough. And that, folks, is where my tale winds down. After all the drama, the heartache, and the big reveal, life sorta just rolled on. It's funny, how things turn out. One day you're planning a wedding, thinking you've got it all figured out, and the next, you're flying solo, charting a course through uncharted waters. Claire, well, she became a part of my history, a lesson learned, a story to tell. I hope she found her peace, figured out her own stuff. As for me, I was back to square one, but it wasn't all bad. Starting over had its perks. I rediscovered old joys, explored new passions, and reconnected with myself. It's like I got a second shot at being, well, me. Sure, there were moments when the whole saga would replay in my head. But those moments got fewer and further between. Life's too short to live in the rearview mirror, right? I kept my eyes on the road ahead, excited about the unknowns. I leaned on my friends, those solid gold folks who stuck by me through the storm. We had some good times, shared a lot of laughs. They reminded me that no matter how rough it gets, you're not alone. There's always someone ready to pick you up, share a beer, and talk about everything or nothing at all. So, what's the moral of the story? Maybe it's that life throws curveballs, and sometimes they hit you right in the gut. But you get back up, dust yourself off, and keep swinging. Or maybe it's about trust, how it's the foundation of everything, and once it's gone, it's pretty darn hard to rebuild. In the end, this whole roller coaster ride taught me a bunch about myself. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can face just about anything and come out the other side. I also learned it's okay to not have all the answers, to take life as it comes and enjoy the ride. So, there you have it. My story of love, betrayal, and finding my feet again. It's been one heck of a journey, but hey, that's life, unpredictable, messy, but also pretty amazing. Now, I'm just cruising along.